If you've been through a relationship with a narcissistic person, you probably expected that if they ever felt they were losing you, it would look obvious. You may have imagined anger, panic, dramatic promises, or some clear emotional collapse. And sometimes that does happen, but very often the real sign is quieter than that. It can be so quiet that you miss it. It can even make you question your own reality. The unexpected sign a narcissist knows they've lost you is not always that they become louder. It is often that they become strangely calm. Not peaceful, not healthy, not genuinely accepting. Calm in a controlled, calculated way. That shift can be confusing because for so long your pain may have been met with blame, denial, coldness, or emotional chaos. Then, suddenly, when you start pulling back, when you stop explaining, when you stop chasing understanding, they seem more composed, more measured, more polite, sometimes even more respectful than they were before. And because you were trained to look for the obvious explosion, you may not recognize what this quieter change really means. It often means they feel the loss of control. That matters, because in narcissistic dynamics, control is usually more important than connection. This is why so many people leave these relationships feeling deeply confused. They keep trying to solve the relationship as if it was built on mutual care, while the other person was often relating through power, emotional positioning, and self-protection. That does not mean every difficult person is a narcissist, and it does not mean everything they did was fully conscious. But it does mean you were likely dealing with an imbalance that was never really about shared emotional safety. It was about who got to define reality, who got to receive the attention, who got to be excused, and who had to keep adjusting. So if you are at the point where they seem oddly settled, oddly unreadable, or suddenly less reactive, that does not automatically mean they have grown. It may mean they have recognized something they did not want to face before. They are no longer dealing with the version of you that kept trying to earn fairness. They are dealing with a version of you that is beginning to detach. And that is a serious loss to them. A narcissistic person often feels secure not when love is present, but when access is present. Emotional access, mental access. The ability to disturb your peace, pull you into defense, make you doubt yourself, or keep themselves at the center of your emotional world. As long as they can still get a reaction, they often feel that the bond is still alive, on their terms. Even negative attention can feel like reassurance to them. Your anger, your pleading, your long messages, your need to explain, your attempts to fix things, all of that tells them they still matter enough to move your nervous system. That is why the sudden calm can be such an important sign. They sense that your emotional availability is changing. You are no longer as reachable. You are no longer as easy to hook. Your energy is no longer organized around them in the same way. They may not say it directly, but they feel it. And when they feel it, many of them do something very revealing. They stop investing in open conflict and start investing in image, positioning, and quiet testing. This can look like them becoming unusually pleasant. Not warm in a real way, but careful. They may speak to you more softly. They may act as if there is no problem. They may suddenly seem reasonable, even though your pain was dismissed for months or years. That shift can make you wonder if you overreacted. It can make you think, maybe now they finally understand. But often what is happening is not empathy, it is strategy. They have noticed that old methods are no longer working, so they change methods. This is one of the hardest parts for people to understand, because it feels so backward. You suffered while you were still available. You were met with resistance while you were still trying. But when you begin to emotionally withdraw, that is when they become more composed. It can feel insulting on a very deep level. Like, now that you are finally exhausted, now they know how to act. And, in a sense, that is exactly what makes the moment so revealing. It shows that the issue was never your communication skills alone. It was never that you just hadn't found the right words. The problem was that they had no reason to change while they still believed they had full access to you. Another way this calm shows up is through reduced emotional intensity paired with increased observation. They may stop arguing as much, but start watching you more closely. They may pay attention to whether you reply, whether you look affected, whether you still explain yourself, whether you still want them to understand your side. They may become less openly confrontational and more subtle. A text that seems casual but is designed to pull you back in. A small comment meant to test whether you are still emotionally hooked. A sudden act of kindness that appears at the exact moment you were gaining distance. None of this feels dramatic enough to justify alarm, and that is why it works so well. It slips past your defenses because it does not look like the version of harm you learned to expect. What is happening psychologically is fairly simple, even if the experience feels complicated. Narcissistic patterns are often built around regulation through external control. Instead of managing inner insecurity in a stable way, the person manages it through dominance, attention, idealization, devaluation, or emotional influence. So when you become calmer, clearer, or less responsive, they lose one of the external tools they depended on. That creates pressure inside them. But instead of processing that pressure honestly, many will try to regain balance by adapting their behavior just enough to re-establish influence. This is why the calm is not always a sign of surrender. Sometimes it is a reconnaissance phase. They are studying the new version of you. They may also become more invested in appearances. They may seem extra calm in public, extra kind around others, extra mature in how they speak about the situation. If you do not understand the pattern, this can be devastating. You were there for the private reality. You know the confusion, the shifting standards, the emotional punishments, the self-centeredness, the way your needs became inconvenient the moment they required accountability. And then suddenly, they present as balanced, collected, maybe even misunderstood. That can make you feel invisible all over again. But this is often another sign they know something has changed. If they can no longer fully manage you, they may shift their attention to managing the story. And the reason this hurts so much is because it touches the old wound. The wound that says, maybe no one will ever really see what happened. Maybe I will carry the truth alone. That pain is real, but their performance does not erase your experience. Their calm exterior does not rewrite the reality of what you lived through. It simply shows where their attention has gone. If they cannot regain control through your emotions, they may try to protect themselves through optics. There is also another layer here that people rarely talk about. When a narcissist knows they are losing you, they may stop trying to convince you and start trying to preserve their own ego. That can look like indifference. It can look like emotional flatness.
It can look like a sudden lack of interest in resolving anything. And again, that can be deeply confusing because you may have spent so long hoping for honesty, closure, or one real conversation. But many narcissistic people do not seek closure the way emotionally healthy people do. Closure requires truth. It requires mutual recognition. It requires the ability to tolerate being seen clearly. And if that threatens the false self they rely on, they may choose distance, silence, or controlled politeness instead. In other words, the calm is sometimes a form of retreat, not a loving retreat, a defensive one. And this is where your healing begins to get stronger. Because once you understand this, you stop reading every behavior at face value. You stop assuming that surface calm means inner peace. You stop assuming that sudden politeness means remorse. You stop automatically translating their behavior through your own emotional framework. That shift is powerful. It means you are no longer inside the role they assigned to you. For a long time, you may have been the one carrying the emotional labor. You may have been the one trying to name the pattern, repair the disconnection, hold on to the good moments, and make sense of the contradictions. That role can keep you trapped, because it makes you believe that if you just understand enough, explain enough, or love carefully enough, you can stabilize the relationship. But the deeper truth is that many narcissistic dynamics survive because one person keeps doing the emotional work for two. When you stop doing that, the whole structure begins to shake. That is why your detachment matters so much. And detachment does not mean you stopped caring overnight. It does not mean you became cold. It means something inside you finally got tired of bleeding for access to basic respect. It means your mind started seeing the pattern faster than your hope could excuse it. It means you became less available for confusion. That is a major turning point. Even if you still miss them, even if you still grieve the good moments, even if part of you still wants validation, the fact that you can now see the pattern changes everything. A narcissist often knows they have lost you before you fully know it yourself. They can feel that your energy has changed. You are slower to react. You are less eager to clarify. You no longer rush to fix the tension. You may still feel sadness, but you are no longer fighting for the same fantasy. And that is the real loss. Not just your presence, but your emotional investment in the role they built for you. Once you see this, you can respond differently. You do not need to decode every shift in their mood. You do not need to chase the meaning of every mixed signal. You do not need to prove that their calm is fake, or explain the pattern to them until they admit it. In fact, one of the strongest things you can do is let your clarity become private. Let your boundaries become quiet. Let your peace stop requiring their agreement. That might mean shorter responses. It might mean no longer defending obvious truths. It might mean refusing to be pulled into circular conversations. It might mean grieving in private instead of seeking comfort from the person who caused the confusion. It might mean accepting that the closure you wanted is not the closure you will get. And that acceptance is not weakness. It is maturity. It is self-respect. It is the moment you stop placing your healing in the hands of someone who benefited from your self-doubt. The truth is, when a narcissist knows they have lost you, they are often forced to face something they spent a long time avoiding. They are not as powerful as they felt when you were still trapped in the cycle. Their certainty depended on your participation. Their influence depended on your hope. Their version of the relationship depended on your willingness to keep returning to the same emotional ground. When that changes, the illusion weakens. This is why you may notice something very different in yourself, too.
As you step back, you begin to feel the exhaustion more clearly. You begin to see how much of your life was spent monitoring, anticipating, managing, and recovering. At first, that realization can feel painful, even humiliating. But stay with it. There is nothing humiliating about waking up. There is nothing shameful about understanding too late. People do not stay in these dynamics because they are weak. They stay because they are bonded through confusion, intermittent reward, empathy, hope, fear, and the very human need to make meaning out of pain. So if you are noticing that strange calm now, do not rush to interpret it as healing between you. Ask a deeper question. Has their calm come with accountability, consistency, empathy, and respect for your boundaries? Or is it simply a new emotional costume now that the old methods are failing? That distinction matters. Real change is steady. It is not activated only when they feel you slipping away. And most importantly, their behavior does not need to be fully explained for your boundary to be valid.
You do not need a courtroom-level case to step back from something that kept hurting you. You do not need one more dramatic incident to justify protecting your peace. If your body feels calmer away from them, that matters. If your mind feels clearer with distance, that matters. If your spirit feels less crowded when they are not at the center of your thoughts, that matters. Healing often starts there, not with one giant breakthrough, but with a quiet return to yourself. A day where you do not check their tone. A moment where you do not rehearse the conversation in your head. A boundary you keep even though guilt shows up. A truth you finally stop arguing with. And over time, something beautiful begins to happen. The same calm that once confused you starts to grow inside you for real. Not performance, not suppression. Real calm. The kind that comes from no longer abandoning yourself to keep the peace. The kind that comes from seeing clearly. The kind that does not need to win, expose, or convince. It just knows. You know what happened. You know what it cost you. You know how hard you tried. And you also know now that love should not require constant self-erasure. It should not leave you chronically anxious, chronically confused, chronically responsible for someone else's emotional weather. So if they seem strangely calm now, let that show you something instead of pulling you back in. Let it remind you that the deeper shift is not in them. It is in you. You are becoming less controllable because you are becoming more conscious. You are becoming less reactive because you are becoming more grounded. You are becoming less available for distortion because you are starting to trust your own mind again. That is the loss they feel. And that is the beginning of your freedom. You do not need to harden to heal. You do not need to hate them to leave the cycle. You do not need revenge to reclaim your life. You just need truth, boundaries, and enough self-respect to stop bargaining with what keeps breaking you. Peace comes slowly sometimes. Strength comes quietly. But both are possible. And every time you choose clarity over confusion, every time you choose distance over dysfunction, every time you choose your own well-being over the old pull to fix what was never yours to fix, you move closer to that peace. You were not the problem. You were caught in a pattern that trained you to question yourself. Now you get to unlearn that.
Now you get to come back to what is real.
And what is real is this: losing access to your heart is not a small thing. The moment they can no longer control your inner world, the dynamic changes. The moment you stop handing your worth to someone who only valued your emotional availability, you begin to heal. And that healing may be quiet at first, but it is strong, it is steady, and it will carry you forward.